Of every Flyers playoff game right here. PT, we've got the Flyers and the Capitals tonight. We know not only do they have the President's Trophy, the most wins in the league, their goalie's got the most wins in the league, tying an NHL record, and they've also got the leading scorer in the league as well with Alexander Ovechkin. But they bring so much more to the table, and here to tell us more about what else they bring to the table, Chuck Gormley, CSN Mid-Atlantic. He covers the Washington Capitals, knows this Flyers organization well. Chuck?
A couple guys who have combined 5 Stanley Cups, and a lot of Flyers fans know who they are, too, Justin Williams and Mike Richards. And I can't wait. It's a beautiful, beautiful day here in Washington. I'm outside, and it's just wonderful. In fact, I'm going to be doing a Facebook live chat in just a few minutes. But this is playoff hockey right here. I can't wait.
Well, Chuck, it's been playoff hockey for the Capitals, but there's been a lot of heartbreak for them. Why should this year be thought differently in the nation's capital?
Well, I think I mentioned 2 reasons. I think that the problem with this team in the past was that they just couldn't close out a series. Since Alex Ovechkin has been in Washington Capital, they have blown 4 2-game advantages in the playoffs, and they've only won 4 out of their 11 playoff series. So I think there needs to be a change in attitude because the fans here, they can't trust this team. They can't fall in love with this team because they keep getting their hearts ripped out every year. And I think that, this team seems to be different. Just the way they play in the third period, they had more goals in the third period than any other team in the league. They just seem to be able to shut teams down when it matters most. And that's why I think there are a few more people believing in this team this year.
Chuck, it's Pete Thompson. How are you, buddy?
Great. Thanks, Pete.
Tell me about Barry Trotz and what he's brought to the Capitals under his leadership.
That's a good question because 2 years ago, this team missed the playoffs and fired the GM, fired the coach, and everyone wondered how long it would be before they became respectable again. And I remember George McPhee, the former GM, said to me, in 2 years, this team's going to be able to challenge for a cup. And a lot of people looked at him crazy, like that can't happen. And yet, Barry Trotz is the reason. They brought him in, and he set a structure for this team. He set accountability for guys like Alex Ovechkin. And Ovechkin went from being a minus 35 to being a plus player. He's got to be like in the plus 15, plus 20 range, and he's still scoring 50 goals. So he was able to keep encouraging the offense, but have him be responsible defensively. And I think that kind of carried suit throughout the entire lineup. They went out and they got Brooks Orpik on the back end, Matt Niskanen, kind of an underrated defenseman. And they've added the right pieces with Justin Williams and TJ Oshie. And now with Evgeny Kuznetsov, and I don't know how many people in Philly know much about him, but he's got to be, in my opinion, top 3 centers in the entire league. And I think that's the depth that they needed to kind of help out Nick Backstrom on that top line.
I think that's the guy. Kuznetsov is everybody loves to give Ovechkin the headlines, and of course he has goals that are spectacular and he can put the puck in the net, but I thought Kuznetsov is the secret weapon, if you will, that Flyers fans may overlook.
Yeah, I think you're right, and he's one of the best passers that I've seen in the game ever, and he's right up there with Gretzky, and that's quite a compliment, especially in the way the game is played now. It's so much harder to create space. And to me, the real key in the series is if the Flyers can get to him physically, we're gonna see a very long series. If they don't get to him physically, I think it'll be a short one. And I think you can say the same thing about both teams on the back end. I think the Flyers are going to go after Shane Gostisbehere really hard and see if they can knock him off his game. And I think the Flyers are going to go after Dmitry Orlov, a guy who can dish it out, but boy, he takes some hits and he coughs the puck up. So to me, it's the back end. Like, to me, your third pairing wins or loses you a series.
Chuck Gormley is with us, CSN Mid-Atlantic. He covers the Washington Capitals. Chuck, how much stock do you put into the 4 regular season meetings, and most specifically the one on March the 30th, where I really thought the Flyers elevated their game late in the year? You saw how far the Flyers came from where they were earlier in the year in that late matchup, but how much stock do you put in those meetings?
I put a lot of stock in them. I think you can set a tone, and I think the Flyers certainly set a tone in that game. It was a scoreless game, a very tight game. the crowd was pretty quiet for the first two periods, and then the third period just got so electric. A lot of, I'd say it was borderline hits, some dirty hits from behind on both sides, a lot of net crashing on both sides. I talked with Sean Couturier today, and he said expect the same. And Wayne Simmons said the same thing. If we can take away Braden Holtby's eyes and get in his crease and maybe get in his mask a little bit, then they can win this series. And I think he's right. I think penalties will play a big role in this series. If either team loses its edge emotionally and ends up in the box, I think that team's in for a long series. So I think we saw a little bit of that in the 4 games. The Capitals gave the Flyers 17 power plays, and if that happens in this series, it could be a long one for the Flyers, and that's a good thing. The longer it is for the Flyers, the better.
Hey, Chuck, Braden Holtby ties Martin Brodeur for 48 wins. And, I mean, you look at anytime you mention Martin Brodeur's name, you think of an all-time great and elite. Should we be looking at Holtby as that player, that type of player this year? Is the defense in front of him have a lot to do with that? Is he a big difference maker for a team that is very deep offensively and very good defensively? Do they have that elite player also in goal?
I think they do, and he reminds me a lot of a young Ron Hextall. He's very fiery. He doesn't attack players like Ron Hextall did in his crease with Kent Nielsen and Chris Chelios, but he is a very intense guy, a guy that his teammates love to play in front of. And, yeah, I think that the right structure is in front of him, much like Marty Brodeur when he played in Jersey. A lot of people said he didn't have to make that many saves. You know, he made maybe 25 to 30 a night, and it's pretty much the same here in Washington. I think Braden Holtby is not tested as much as some other goalies in the league. But I'll tell you one thing that's very maybe not known around the league. He's got the highest save percentage in the playoffs of any goaltender in the history of the game, .936. So that's it.
We'll leave you with this real fast, Chuck. You know, the Flyers got in. There's been a lot of playoff feeling. The Capitals have kind of been in. Is there skepticism, or do you feel that the fans are really confident in this year's Capitals team?
I think there's skepticism. I think until you win, there's that. And I think any sports fan, if you've had your heart torn out enough times, you're afraid to expose it again. And that's where I think this team is with its fans. And they're in a show-me state. You know, they really need to see this in Game 1. And then they'll jump on board. But until then, I think there's a lot of skepticism.
That series starts tonight right here on 97.3. Chuck Gormley, CSN on Twitter. And he, of course, down there covering the Capitals. Used to be up in this area,
yeah, he's
so
seen
knows,
both fans.
knows this area really well. And I know it should be a fun series. Chuck, we do appreciate a couple minutes of your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.